It's the end of the day with Ray. Folks, it's getting more exciting by the minute. I'm still here at Impact, but I got a special guest I'm going to talk to today because no organization can be prosperous, do remarkable things if they don't have a remarkable training aspect behind it. And Ashley's been with Impact for a while. She's built a phenomenal training platform, and I want to talk to her about that because anybody that's trying to transition, move into IT, whatever you're trying to do, even if you're trying to be successful in the core deliverable of print, without training, it's going to fall on its face. Ashley, it's so great to talk to you. I'm so excited about this. I got to say the same thing to you, but man, I look at this. Isn't this unbelievable?
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
So this has to be really cool when you get a brand new rep and you're getting ready to put them through the training process and they look at all this and they're thinking, let me ask you this. Do they think I really need to learn this stuff because I don't want to leave here?
Yeah, I think anytime we bring anyone to our facilities, it's meant to set the stage for the entire experience. Learning is an important piece for any business, as you've just said. And I think particularly for true consultative sales professionals, they have to approach it as if it's a craft that they need to perfect. And whether you're a doctor or a lawyer or a true consultative sales professional, we aim to really hone the skill set and make it a pretty dimensional 360 experience for an ongoing developmental roadmap. But it begins at day one. So I think we set the pace pretty high.
Well, you know, I'll never forget it. When I started selling copiers, of course, back in those days, you had the van, you're schlepping them out of the back of the van.
Times have changed.
You know, and my neighbor,
Yeah.
I was finally telling him I was a copier salesman.
Okay.
And he just looks at me and he goes, well, you were just born to be a salesman.
Sure.
And I really got offended. I'm like, wait a second. No. I had to read, I had to study, I had to apply. You know, were you born to be a lawyer?
That's too funny.
But it's the truth. And I think a lot of times people think that you might have some aptitudes that make you a good salesperson.
Sure.
If you apply all the other skills and you learn all those other skills.
Sure.
But, you know, when you're bringing in a brand new rep, and, you know, here you are a managed services provider, and you have complex contracts that you're offering customers, you have complex assessments that you're offering customers. So there wouldn't be any reason not to have a really thorough, complex training plan because that really sets the groundwork for what you're actually going to deliver to the end user.
Oh, yeah. So I think that age-old debate of is it art, is it science? There's an element of all, and particularly at Impact, as I'm sure you've come to know, we are extremely process-oriented. And so I always tell a brand new consultative seller that the science is largely figured out for you. And so you're lucky enough if you can apply a level of skill and a level of will. And some of those things are intangibles that you can't teach. But if you can truly apply that and take advantage of the science that's been built, and when I say this science, I mean the methodology, the go-to-market strategy, the facilities, the resources, the tools, the service delivery aspect, a lot poured into that naturally makes, I think, for a compelling environment from which learning is born. But you have to celebrate that and know how to exercise that and apply a level of discipline, due diligence, and true upskilling to be, I think, competitive in today's marketplace as a true consultative seller. And we spend a lot of time, I think, breaking down what that is, what that looks like. So early on in building out this program, it had to really, I think, even bubble up higher level than that. It's not a program, it's a culture, it's a way of life. And so as an organization, you have to embody a learning culture. And I think that's a misconception that people don't even realize or maybe pay enough attention to. It's not something that happens overnight. It has to be truly baked into the culture, and that means it's an ongoing investment, and there's a forethought on how you want people to move and behave and modify behaviors and ultimately learn and grow to be of true service to your customers. So there's so much that goes into it. I think while as many things remain universal about selling, even from the age-old days of copiers and what original box slinging looked like, and that was my early days here at Impact as well, 10 plus years ago. So too have a lot of things evolved, and particularly in the way people buy. And it's not just on us as the consultative seller to upskill ourselves, but to truly understand and be empathetic to the consultative buyer and how it's changed for them too.
Well, you know, most people leave an organization, especially salespeople, they leave an organization because they don't have a confidence. And the reason they don't have a confidence is because somebody forgot to train them, or somebody callously trained them. Can just throw something out. Yeah, go in this room and read these books and all this kind of stuff. How many people do you have on your team to just focused on education?
Sure. So we have 6 right now on the learning and development team. And to your point, you spoke of a few different modalities of learning. And again, I think there's so many misconceptions about this. And even to me, the word training has always been a bit of a dirty word. Again, I didn't come from a professional learning and development background. I came from the field as a professional seller and being really passionate and in love with what happens at the front lines of the customer experience, and personally took a lot of pride in integrity and what it meant to make promises and ensure they got seen through. It's how you build and deepen your customer relationships. So the word training to me was always a bit of a dirty word, because it to me connotated some like in a vacuum, in a classroom, disconnected afterthought, right? And so when I first stepped into the role of director of sales strategy, that was back in 2018, it was with a really intentional purpose to be a voice from the field and to be a bit of a conduit between what actually is happening out there, what are our customers saying, what are they feeling, and what are we doing about that, and then being that sounding board for the rest of the professional service teams, whether that was corporate marketing or training or service delivery. And so that was the initial intent. And really quickly, we realized just how important the training aspect of that was. So when we embarked on that, I was very intentional up front to say, I am not a trainer, and this isn't training. This is systematic change management. This is cultural. This is embodying a culture of learning. So I like to be intentional about that up front, because training is just one aspect of that whole experience. And from there,
it's very finite.
Yeah.
I was trained. I got the certificate.
Right. Like, what does that mean? And especially in the world of sellers, when we're change makers, we make things happen. And if you need to change or modify behaviors or upskill people or make them confident enough to bring a message to market and be disciplined enough to do it every day and be resilient enough, like, you have to have a lot of mechanisms in place. So to answer your question, we have 6 on the team right now. It's a diverse team of instructional designers, curriculum developers, sales enablement and training folks, facilitators, and it's a team that I love being a part of. I love growing, I love stretching, and we will continue to add new folks every single day that will continue to carve out new avenues of learning, not just for sales, but also organizational wide.
So if I'm a rep, let's start me out as a new rep.
Okay.
So I'm a new rep, you bring me on board. What does that look like? Like, I mean, I don't want to use the word training anymore. You're going to, but I'm going to come in, and I know I have to learn some things. But I have to learn a whole lot of things.
So many things.
And then as I learn about what Impact offers, it could be overwhelming. I mean, you got marketing. I mean, it could be like, oh my gosh, what am I going to actually go sell? And there's a lot of folks in our space that have gotten into like IT services.
Yeah.
And they might have been in IT services for 10 years.
Sure.
If you talk to their reps, they don't even know what they deliver, and they can't articulate the value problem.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of truth.
So how do you filter that out? I mean, how do you say, okay, we're going to take this person? What's that process for the first 6 months?
That's a great question. And this is one that I think we gave so much time and attention to. So when I went from a sales rep, an individual contributor in my first 4 years here at Impact, and then went on to be a sales manager, that's where I fell in love with coaching and development and leading. So again, while that wasn't traditional learning and development, that's where I personally fell in love with this idea of upskilling and lifting everyone around you, right? A rising tide lifts all ships. And I love seeing smart, ambitious, and competitive people playing at their A game. And that's kind of what we do around here. So in day one, right, after 7 years in the field, being on meetings all day, pounding the phones, day one in this new role as director of sales strategy, I was sitting in, I'll never forget it, it was our old Chicago office, in a conference room, which was all glass. We like glass around here. So it felt like a fishbowl just staring at a blank screen, and was like, now what? Right? I don't have a leaderboard. I don't have metrics to hit. Like, what's my new definition of success? And all I could think about was, what will it mean now for any consultative seller coming in? And how can we templatize their success? How can we institutionalize their knowledge and no longer leave it to chance? Because I knew as a sales manager myself, when I had a strong rep, even if they were young and hungry, there was always some intangible about where they turn a corner. And I remember saying, we can't leave that to chance anymore. So the first order of business was to take an inventory of skills. And so for anyone out there that's embarking on building out a high-performing sales training curriculum, I would, step number one, ask you to introspect a bit and take an inventory of skills and say, if you can reflect on your strongest reps and you could isolate individual skills, traits, attributes, or behaviors, write it down on paper. And that was my first exercise. And in doing so, I realized there was patterns there. And typically, all of those skills, traits, or behaviors fell into one of four categories. And I think perhaps this is a bit particular to our industry. It either fell into a bucket of sales skills, either a bucket of what was previously product knowledge, but now I would argue that splits into managed services mastery, which might be more so about the mindset and the implications of non-action, the consequences or implications of cybersecurity done right or wrong, right? And then from there, as well as industry knowledge, it didn't used to matter as much in the context of office equipment because while a copier made bait stamp, right, and watermark, and you could show similar features, it didn't really matter, right? These devices behaved the same. But now more than ever, if you're selling true business outcomes in the context of digital innovation and business applications and managed marketing, that has to really be dialed in and verticalized by what market you're serving. So that is a whole other element, again, of learning skill that emerged from this inventory. And then everyone's favorite, which is the process, procedural, and system skills. So whether that was how to fire up your CRM for the first time or really work through advanced solution configuration within your CRM and then enact any sort of internal process with leasing or admin, it fell into one of those four buckets. So the first thing we did in that conference room was to take all of those things and start to map them and put them on a continuum of beginner to advanced. And from there, we wireframed just particular milestones. And I wasn't sure then what those milestones would look like in a performance solution. If it meant that that was going to be a classroom experience or a digital, e-learning that's either self-paced and asynchronous or synchronous. It was just, I needed to know that there were certain lines in the sand or mile markers along the marathon that we could keep track of to ensure their development and institutionalize that and replicate it and make that scalable. So that was the first thing I did. And so that vision has evolved a lot from my early days inside that conference room, talking to the walls, to now bouncing that off of a full team. And so I'm really excited and proud to say we stand before you today really with this very strong vision of an 18-month incubation. It's an 18-month consultative sales fundamentals program that is made up of multiple learning touch points, multiple modalities, multiple skill checks and wellness checks, so that when we have a new seller on day one, I can tell them what their next year and a half is going to hold. And it is going to be a line in the sand marked with classroom experience. It's going to be an enriching, also cultural-based experience because you keep a cohort together over a year and a half. We move them through every dominant market across the country of impact. And it's really aimed at just imparting the sense of sales skill, of business acumen, of managed services mastery, of vertical market knowledge, and of process and procedure that they would need to be successful. So we have it dialed in.
It's just, what's amazing as I sit here and listen to you is that, in the technology sector, in the managed services sector, you guys are actually the college for it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, and the fact that you're constantly modifying along the way, so you eat your own dog food, if you will.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's really amazing. And I was able to spend an hour and a half with you and really kind of dig into some of this. And we can't obviously do all that on this video, but I think the biggest thing that I take away from what you've done here in this remarkable training atmosphere is that you have a disciplined approach. And so I'll ask you this question because at the end of the day, there's a lot of sales managers that are out there. Yeah. They got to make their money. They got to hit their P&L numbers.
Sure.
So does that ever interfere with the training?
That's such a fascinating question. I think if not done right, I could see why that would potentially be an outcome where those two things would be in conflict. The answer to that is no. In fact, it's quite the opposite. In order for this to work, you need buy-in from your sales leadership. And again, fortunate for me, I love our sales leaders. I was peers with them, so we have that natural relationship and feedback loop. And that's a really critical component to this, because if what you're doing inside a classroom conflicts with what experience they'll have in the field, it's dead in water, right? There needs to be a bridge from theory to practice. You need buy-in from your sales leadership team to ensure the experience disparity between what they learn in a classroom doesn't all of a sudden feel like a different message in the field. And so instead, in fact, again, quite the opposite, I think when you have that relationship done well, that creates an open feedback loop. So there's multiple people who have a stake in the development of that rep. And then when they leave the classroom, we can work directly with the sales managers to say, you're brand new rep, you have a great hire on your hands. We just spent a full week with them. We got to really know them, right? More than they ever showcased in an interview with their sales manager. And so we get to go back to them and say, so-and-so is really phenomenal, but watch out for this blind spot. Or so-and-so is a perfectionist. And so they need to really give themselves grace. Make sure to, really feed that part of them. We can identify the personal and professional marks of what could derail their success or really expedite their success. So that has to be a big part of it. And in turn, I think you have to open up to your sales leaders and treat them as the subject matter experts as they are, to say, what lines of success do you deem necessary and how can we incorporate that into the curriculum? So that way we're all in it together. We're all keeping these accountability checks together so that we can say, as a 3-month rep, a 6-month rep, a 9-month rep, regardless of your tenure or experience outside of Impact, we have some semblance of control and a forecastability as to where they're at developmentally. And that feeds a lot, again, into the culture of the company. I think it can put the learners at ease because when they're feeling overwhelmed, which you mentioned, that is a true, I think, challenge we face today here at Impact. There's so much that we can go to market with. There's so much to offer. There's so much opportunity, but that also comes with a pretty steep learning curve. And that learning curve can be very daunting for high performers who are used to feeling at the top of their game. So there's an element of just empathy and stripping that down a bit and making sure that they feel assured that they're right where they're meant to be, to give themselves grace along that journey.
Well, if they go through this process, they're so much more prepared to sell a complicated process themselves. Yeah. But now you're at you're probably at more of a maturity level now that maybe the sales managers that are in the field actually had to go through the training themselves, so they have a buy-in and they understand how it works and how it helped them develop their own career. So that probably helps a lot.
We're in the middle of it right now. So we're in this very precarious position because the vision that I've just detailed for you, we're actively building it. So I think that expression is used a lot here, that throwing the tires on the race car while you're sending it down the track, and that's very true of our own team. So we are building out these courses and launching them and facilitating them in real time, and then trying to retroact our legacy reps and all of our sales management. So I think that's just a load balancing challenge that we'll continue to face, and we'll continue to be hiring for skilled master trainers and sales facilitators to keep up with that. Because the clock also continues to restart every other month on this program, because we continue to onboard new sales talent every other month. So conceivably in the very near future, we'll have 6 courses running in parallel, right, crossing hairs in different marketplaces around the country in all of our offices.
Well, so there's no doubt why you're remarkable as a company. And it really does start with the training. I was telling, the other guys that I've talked to since I've been here that, the entrepreneurs can have a vision, but without the right people, the vision won't be clear and the vision won't be executed. And, you're doing remarkable things. I want to keep tabs on you. And I think one day I'm going to come and sit in on one of your training classes.
That would be fun.
Learning.
That's right, our learning experiences.
Learning experience. Ashley, it's so great to talk to you. You got to be so proud of this facility and the company you work for. I can't wait till tomorrow that we have a big open house here at the SOC Center.
It's going to be fun. Yeah, the past 11 years have been filled with so many milestones. I think we all kind of pinch ourselves looking around as to how far we've come, but yet still how far we have to go.
It's an amazing story. And everybody watching me knows this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo. We'll see you all later.